Back in the end of '06 into '07, I was asked to go to Mid Central Jail and be the captain to oversee what I found out later to be a very dysfunctional operation of Mid Central Jail at the time. Paul Tanaka gave me a call and said, we've got some force that's going on, we've got morale issues, there's some significant problems, we'd like you to come in and take care of it. I said, yeah, no problem. I didn't realize how bad it was when I got there. My third day there, a federal judge had come up and said, we want to visit the jail. We hear there's some writing on the wall. I said, sure, come on down, sir. And he says, okay. About a half hour later, he was there. We walked around. We went up to 3100, the 3000 floor. And we walked in there, and I was embarrassed. It was absolutely atrocious. We saw writing, arbitrary scribbling on the keyboards of all the computers, around the monitor itself, on the ceilings, on the walls, very negative comments. There's a bumper sticker that said, please don't feed the animals, and that's what really upset the judge. The fire hose, safety equipment had scribbling on it. The windows was broken on the front of the door. It was absolutely atrocious and very shameful that the jail had deteriorated to such a condition. But that was only indicative, that one area was only indicative of what the entire Mid Central Jail was at the time. But for the next year, we worked real hard at fixing it. And we did such a good job that by the end of '07, for the year of '07, we were able to lower the amount of force that was used at Mid Central Jail by over 25%. And we did it without any more money added to the program, without any more deputies, without any more supervision, and without any cameras. We just held people accountable for what needed to be done. And part of that was my office was more inside the jail than it was outside the jail. So by walking around and inspecting what you expect, and by seeing the processes and how they work, and talking to the people to determine how and why they do their job and being able to fine-tune it, Mid Central Jail turned around and was really a great place to work. Lee Baca loved what I'd done and promoted me in April of '08. But here's the sad part that came up. They brought in a captain who just happened to be a very good friend with Paul Tanaka. And this captain allowed the jail to then depreciate. So much so that force was out of control. And by the time we were able to identify exactly what some of the causes were, we found out that in '09, when it really got at its worst, the beating of inmates, significant force where bones were broken or there were head strikes that caused hospitalization, had absolutely skyrocketed about 75% of what it had been the 3 previous years. We took a look at it and determined that there were some significant problems going on. The problem wasn't the men and women on the department that were doing it so much, it was the leadership that allowed this to occur. The leadership of that particular captain of turning a blind eye and not wanting to do anything about it because it was more important to be liked than it was to do the job. I went to my boss, I said, my chief, and I said, we need to move this captain. Here is the problem. And he said, no, he said he can't do it, and he won't do it. This is Paul Tanaka's guy, and it's I'm not going to even take that on. So I told him that I have to go over your head. And so I went to Marv Cavanaugh, his boss, and he wouldn't do anything about it because he felt stymied and couldn't make changes because Paul Tanaka was the one that was controlling the operation. I went to Paul on 2 different occasions, and he said, not only are we not going to move him, we're going to promote him, and you're going to help me promote him because there's no other Hispanics in the arena that are good enough in my eyes to promote. I found that atrocious. And at that particular point, my wife at the time became terminally ill. I went home, took care of her for the next couple of months. But I didn't give up. The problem was still there, so I went to Lee Baca on 2 separate occasions after that. And I said, the problem is still going on. We're having deputies that are purposely breaking bones and doing head strikes as an initiation to belong to these rogue gangs of deputies on the 3,000 floor and the 2,000 floor, the 3,000 boys. And we need to do something about it. We take an oath, and we abide by the oath, and we have to uphold the Constitution. And when we violate the Constitution, the democracy fails by its very nature. Lee Baca wouldn't do anything, turned around and walked away. That's when I made the decision to go ahead and retire And at that particular point, I said, then I have to go to the FBI. And I'm glad I did. These 3,000 boys eventually ended up beating up deputies on the visiting crew. But can you only imagine just the audacity of deputies beating up deputies? What do they then do to the inmates? If they're willing to beat up deputies because they won't conform, what do you think they did to the inmates? What do they think they do to the public on the street? Absolutely uncalled for. Make a long story short, here's the alpha omega of this. The captain involved was punitively assessed on 2 federal cases, over $115,000 in damages. That's supposed to come out of his pocket because the federal jury had determined he was a particular problem that led to all this. At the same time, Lee Baca was punitively assessed $100,000 himself, which is supposed to come out of his own pocket as well. That's the alpha omega. That's what started it, and that was should have ended it, and it didn't occur. But justice was served at this particular point, at least for punitive damages. But the sad part is we've now got 21 deputies indicted. Matter of fact, there's one in trial right now, and that's shameful. 21 families of men and women on the department disrupted. 20, and I'm not even talking about the number of families that have been disrupted as a result of the 21 deputies, the beating of the inmates needlessly, and their families have been destroyed. This is a lose-lose. I don't care how you look at it. All of it could have been prevented. None of this never needed to occur had we had good, strong leadership. It's, again, the catastrophic failure of leadership of the LA County Sheriff's Department that got us exactly where we're at right now. Somebody needs to stand up and do the right thing. My pathway to reform is my roadmap. You can find it on my website, bobolmsted.com, and it's a 17-page comprehensive document. That and other aspects that need to be looked at on the LA County Sheriff's Department.